Another day, another mid-year book freakout tag. Um, I don't know why I felt so compelled to sit in this corner, but I did, and I am. So that's what's happening. I hope you guys have been having a good reading year. My name is Anna. If you don't know, welcome back. If you're back, um, I read a diverse array of books, but this year I've read not as many as normal. I had a very chaotic beginning of the year for a lot of reasons, but it's still nice to just take stock of what I have read and share a couple of the things I read with you, as well as some things I'm looking forward to reading the rest of this year, because I think I'll be reading a lot more the second half. So, the best read of my year so far is called Sincerely Stoneheart by Emily Wilson, and it is a modern take on the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis for women. So it goes through a lot of different themes. It's all epistolary in nature, just like the Screwtape Letters, and is a demon of sorts writing to the devil or vice versa. Honestly, I forget because that's kind of just the format of the book rather than the point of the book. But in any case, it's two evil forces discussing ways they can make women's lives harder and more frustrating and consumed with comparison a lot of times. It's easy to think that, oh, it would just be easier if I had what someone else had, or if my life was just a little bit different than it is. So that was definitely a theme throughout the book, and I know it's so easy to feel discontent easily in life for a lot of different reasons and feel isolated in that, even though we're not alone, but because we don't always necessarily go through the exact same situations at the same time, it's easy to feel alone. And so, isolation, in any case, is a huge theme discussed and a method through which evil wins. Um, and then, like I said, discontentment was huge throughout the letters of just finding ways to twist goodness of your current season, whether you're single, whether you're a mother, whether you're perfectly content with your life, whether um, whatever it might be, ways that seeds of doubt in contentment are sown, to either feel unloved by God in what you don't have, or um, yeah, even just like the theme of the internet as a whole and how it's literally called the World Wide Web. And in that way, like it is Satan's web in a way that he isolates and fills people's minds with deception and doubt and plagues everything. And it's an image that stuck with me was this idea that like their hands are so close together as if they're almost in prayer, but they're holding this little black device instead. And so like it's an easy like physical replacement for what should be prayer, which was just an interesting image to consider when you consider folding your hands, but instead you're like tapping your phone. I was really encouraged by the book and would recommend it to any other Christian women looking for a good read, because it was very validating in whatever type of life experience or type of struggle, rather, you could be going through in the current moment, and to see that you're not alone through that, because she was acknowledging that and acknowledging that so many women go through those different struggles. So if you are just feeling really discouraged, especially, or even the lie that no one understands, I think this would be a really good book that you should pick up. The best sequel of the year, I've only read one really, and then I'm in the middle of another one that you can kind of see here. But the sequel that I fully read was 5 stars for me, one of my favorite books of the year as well. And that is Always Remember the Boy, the Mole, the Fox, the Horse, and the Storm by Charlie Maxey. I never saw the short film of his first book until this year with my mom, and we cried because it was beautiful. And whenever someone like simply says things that give you resilience, I don't know why that's way more emotional than someone like going on and on about resilience. So the simplicity of the story gets me. So basically, it's about these characters, the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse. and how they come together as friends and help each other through what they're going through. And it's beautiful art style. It's watercolor and pen. And what I really liked about the sequel, without giving it away, is how he like used a little bit of different art strategy to make some memorable images throughout the book, which was really fun. There was one page in particular I thought was beautiful because I love music. And there's always just so much detail to the penmanship, as well as the beauty of the colors that are chosen through the watercolor. And then in this one especially, I noticed the coloring choices of the watercolor throughout the story were done really well to match the tone of what was going on and the array of emotions, positive and negative, that the characters were journeying through. So it's a really beautiful story about a lot of things, about a lot of kinds of struggles and victories. And it's done really simply and beautifully in a way that can really encourage a child, but also encourage an adult. And so I would recommend to everyone. And also, if you're trying to like help a child through more difficult emotions and finding encouragement through hardship, this is a great first stepping stone to do that. The best new release of this year that I have read so far is Rookie by Joshua Taylor Bassett. I have been following him for a few years now in his music. He is younger than me, but has really inspired me in the way he's always been open about abuse that he grew up in and was affected by at a young age. Specifically, how he has turned that into advocacy, and how advocacy has really been a huge piece of providing other people hope despite really hard life experiences, and just having to own up to that reality of his life. And that was something that I really took for my own journey with trauma, to really find strength that my story is not just like pitying or sad or awkward because it's hard or whatever. But more than that, my story is a way that I can empathize with a lot more people and comfort a lot more people and also warn a lot of people. And so that's a way that has really helped me accept my story, even though it's not fun to go through trauma, of course. But yeah, he has really brought that new perspective to my life of healing. And Rookie was very similar. So Rookie was more of a poetry format where he was telling different life stories, and through a couple of poems actually he told his spiritual testimony, which was really cool. Very visceral, very spiritual and demonic, and all of these wild experiences, but very, very true to the theme of testimonies that I've heard throughout my life. So, as crazy as it might sound to other people, it felt very genuine to me. Um, I forget what it was called, but there was a poem near the end of this collection that really tugged at my heartstrings and made me cry. And it was about how to heal and to not be afraid to be a bird with a broken wing, because eventually you will get to the point where you can fly away, and it's okay to need extra tenderness and gentleness in your current season. And that was just very validating for where I was at when I was reading that book, and just feeling very tender and delicate myself. So it was a very encouraging read. It was very emotionally validating as well. This seems to be a wonderful theme of things that I've been reading, to affirm just your life experiences and what you're going through. So I would highly recommend it. I would say, honestly, poetry wise, it was weak in that it really didn't. Some of the poems felt like poems, but some of them read like paragraphs just in a poem looking form, if that makes sense. So, as a poetry collection, I would say it was weak, but the content itself and the stories themselves, and just how blunt and transparent he was so admirable. And so it was easily 4 stars, despite, you know, not being the format I would have chosen personally for what he did, but yeah, I thought the actual content, regardless of the format, was fantastic, and it was powerful to talk through like toxic masculinity, especially as he was the one son among sisters, talking through addiction cycles and recovery cycles, and then of course abuse and all types of exploitation, both personally and professionally. And yeah, it was a well needed spread of advocacy. And also, he had quite a few poems that were addressing the homeless and advocating for the poor and the marginalized, and making sure that these people can feel seen and feel valued, because even if they don't have a home, they're still a person with a story and pain, and too many people overlook them. So I really appreciated the way he humanized and gave them the limelight through several of his poems as well. The most anticipated read of the year that I've not yet read, that is already released, is The Velvet Knife by Maureen Johnson. This is book 7, I want to say. 6, 7, or 8. One of those. I want to say 7. This is a continuation of the Truly Devious series, which I still don't understand how she's like formally structuring the series now, because it was originally a trilogy, but she just keeps going. But anyway, all I know is I can't really say much because, we're like at book 7, but the ending of the last book was really aggravating. And I just hope that Stevie has a much better story in this next one, and that it will be another gripping autumnal mystery as well, because Nine Liars was fantastic and perfect autumnal vibes. So honestly, I'm like worried it's not gonna live up to the last one, because I really loved the last one. It was definitely my favorite one, but I think in any case it'll be like perfect type of book at the perfect time of year for me to maximize the experience of enjoying it. So I'm really looking forward to that. The next one will be the most controversial take. My most disappointing read of the year so far. It was Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I was so looking forward to this. You can hear more in my 2026 TBR. I had been thinking of this book. It had just been recurring in my mind for months last year, if not like the whole year. I don't remember. And so I just had a feeling I was going to love it. And I finally picked it up, and it was a weird roller coaster for me. Like I really didn't know anything about it, but somehow I had expectations it didn't live up to. I don't know. So it started off, and I just knew it was about space to some extent. So I think I was expecting like space sci-fi more than anything. And it turned into fantasy. And I enjoy fantasy. I don't hate fantasy, but I feel like it turned a little too 2014 in execution. And yeah, I didn't like the voice. I really wanted to like Darrow, but I really didn't like the voice of the author. So that really turned me off. And to me, the voice of an author is everything. So, especially if you're trying to read a series or a really large book, um, you can't really sit with a voice if you don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to happen. I I thought it was a good setup as a whole in terms of a series, but I just had no investment in Darrow's stakes more than anything. Like, I liked his origins, but then the way he developed in the relationships he built and the stakes, it just didn't capture me. And honestly, that might just be an age thing where like it was very tropey to 2010s, so it just felt redundant to me. And something can look new, but if it feels redundant to me, I'm like immediately bored. So yeah, I wouldn't be bored if I liked the voice, but it felt tropey. and I didn't like the voice. So basically a recipe for a DNF of a series, and that's exactly what happened. And then, like always, since I DNF'd it, I spark noted the rest of the series and basically confirmed, yeah, I wouldn't have been invested in any of the books. So, like always, I tend to have a really good hunch when I'm not going to love a series, and I made the right choice for myself. The biggest surprise of the year. So these two books, like for my TBR, flipped. I was the most intimidated to read Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom because I was worried I was going to experience grief this year, and I did. Um, and so I just figured this book was going to wreck me and just be like emotionally more than I could bear. And thankfully, it was pre-grief, so that definitely helped, I'm sure, to enjoy the experience. But also, I was just pleasantly surprised that it was not just about death. I don't know, I just figured it would be depressing for some reason. And yeah, it's like a dying man speaking about life, but in that way, it felt really motivating and intentional. The way that Maury was talking about having perspective about the life you're living and just being aware of your time and being aware of your limitations and being aware of your inevitable future so that you can enjoy the present better. And I think, regardless of what you believe and who you are, like that's just really important that we always strive to be present, because life can go all kinds of paces, but it's never to be taken for granted because everything is so special and fleeting. And so, yeah, it was not actually morbid or overtly emotional more than it was inspiring in just making sure I'm prioritizing what I want to be and who I want to be, and all of that. So actually really, really appreciated the sentiments that it left me with. My new favorite author is definitely Beth Brower. I'm really loving reading the Emma M. Lyons series, and I really like the way that her voice combines goofiness with sass, with um, a little bit of solemnity as well and melancholy. And I relate to all of those things and all of those things at once. So it's just been a joy to see her craft her characters and have lots of fun little heartwarming bits as well. And I look forward to seeing how the characters continue to evolve in her series. New fictional crush. I really don't have one. Also, I feel like most things I read were either like nonfiction or children's, so like that's inappropriate, or more concept based and not as character heavy. So I feel like I haven't had a super strong array of characters among the books I've read the first half of this year. So I'm hoping for more character driven stories in the second half of the year. I feel like the last one I really had was Levin and Anna Karenina. New favorite character, also another mention, Emma M. Lyon. She is all of those emotions that I already mentioned that Beth Brower is so great at writing. I really root for her because I'm a melancholy gal myself, but also like her sincere hope for flourishment and joy as well. And I love how she like honors the hard emotions and doesn't suppress them, but she also is searching for wonder and just loving her books along the way. And so I very much selfishly relate to that because that is very much who I am too. The book that made me cry, there are definitely moments in multiple books, but probably the most I cried at one was My Imperfectly Perfect Body by Debbie Tung. This is a graphic novel recounting Debbie's adolescence and her relationship with her body over the years, her relationship with body dysmorphia and eating disorders, and her relationship with other people that both supported or hindered her journey through this process. I related to some of the experiences, didn't relate to others. But overall, I was just so impressed by how she validated people's experiences in an objective way, especially like graphic novels. Like you're also including graphics. Even though it was her life, it just felt like she did it really objectively, which always impresses me when it's like autobiographical. And then on top of that, I really loved how, considering it's probably a lot of adolescents reading this, it wasn't just about the struggle, and it wasn't just like, and then it went away. But something she emphasized a lot was cognitive behavior and really giving examples through the dialogue in this book of what it looks like to change your negative thought patterns into positive ones, into realistic ones. And I think she did it really succinctly in a way that was really easy to follow. And even if you don't have the like psychology jargon for it, right? Um, she did it in a way that a kid could understand, and I thought that was really powerful, and she did a really good job. The book that made me happy, I would say, was the book I started the year with. Kind of. I was technically continuing it from last summer. But Ship of Theseus by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst. This was such a fascinating and de- delightful experience to just take slow in the winter and soak in the very peculiar format of this book. So, for those who don't know, this is like two stories in one. So, the source material of this text is about this character named S who goes on a sea journey with this crew, a little bit like Pirates of the Caribbean, and then the character ends up running into all these kinds of like very action heavy issues. But the meta narrative is that all of the characters in this source text are representative of real people in this broader fictional world that the second storyline is connected to. So the second storyline is this entire book is full of fictional annotations by these two characters that I would actually consider the protagonists of the story rather than the source material. So here's an example. You can see they have on every single page annotations. So the concept of the book is this is a library book from their alma mater slash college. The two characters are Jen and Eric, and they're passing this book back and forth to figure out the mystery of what happened to this fictional author, V.M. Straka, and who the characters are representative of. And the source text has a translator who's giving footnotes throughout, and the footnotes have codes and coded messages that Jen and Eric are decoding, and that you as the reader get to help decode to figure out where the author is, how the translator is trying to communicate with the author, what the translator is trying to say to the author, what the translator's relationship is with the author. As you can tell, there's so many layers to this book, and it was such a fascinating experience. As you can tell, you also need the discipline and headspace to really take your time. And for those who are curious about trying it, I would recommend that you go chapter by chapter, read it once through just the source text with the footnotes, and then read it back again with Jen and Eric's annotations. And I really loved Jen and Eric's character development. There's a lot of just falling in love with the characters that's so fun, and just the joy of having a unique reading experience for me. Like, it gave me so much dopamine, and it was such an intriguing experience that I always wanted to rush to get to at the end of a busy day of work. So it was really easy to get through because it just fascinated me so much, and I've never read anything like it. So it was a whole lot of fun. So if you love something that has a lot of adventure and mystery and other subplots that I don't really want to spoil, um, please check it out. The most beautiful book I read so far was easily The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I had this very beautiful copy that I'll put on the screen that had gold foiling and flowers and greenery, and it just felt like the epitome of spring to me. So that was definitely a delight to crack open in the springtime. Um, it is a children's classic, so I'm sure a lot of you have at least heard of it, if not read it yourselves. But we follow Mary as she goes off to Misselthwaite Manor after her family passed via the cholera outbreak, I believe. And so she goes to this house and is exploring and trying to really find enjoyment and wonder in life again after tragedy. Maybe that, you know, being so young, she maybe can't fully wrap her head around. But along the way, she meets some new friends and finds ways to try not to spoil it. Finds ways to um, spread the joy of nature with other people. And the theme, as you can imagine, for springtime is that there is this overrun and neglected garden that she finds. And over the course of the story, you really see flourishment in every single way, both her spirit, the environment, the garden itself, the relationships. It's a really beautiful story to meditate on the characters, celebrate the characters and their journey, and also just to enjoy that idea of growth and newness always flourishing from dormancy. So that was a really refreshing theme to sit with. And then finally, just wanted to talk a little bit about my books that I want to read the rest of the year. So, like I've already mentioned a couple times, I'm loving Emma M. Lyon. I'm currently on volume 2. And so I'm hoping to, of course, prioritize reading all of the currently published books. I'm sure there will be a lot more. So I'm just really enjoying the voice, and I'm really enjoying the characters and the relationships. And not a whole lot has happened yet, but I have just really enjoyed the comedy so far and the people. Like, they're all so endearing in the ways that they relate to one another and pester one another and find joy with one another. And I just know there's going to be a lot of good character development. So it's really heartwarming already. I know the movie is coming out later this year. I forget when, but I really do want to read Clara and the Sun, so it feels like a good time to do this year and then follow it up with the movie. I honestly just got a little bit of Big Hero 6 vibes from the concept of the book, so that's a big reason that I added it to my list. But I have also read Never Let Me Go already by Kazuo Ishiguro, so I know that I enjoy his concepts and find them fascinating, so I'm sure Clara and the Sun will also be fascinating, and that is a type of sci-fi that I find intriguing. So I'm curious. This has to also be sci-fi because it has to do with a robot and or a cyborg of some sorts, Clara. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it. I really don't know much about it, and I want to keep it that way because Never Let Me Go was like mind blowing in how he unraveled that. So I'm super curious to see if I have a similar affect with this one. The book that I think I really want to read this fall is The Secret History. It's such a dark academia classic, and I've known I wanted to read it for a while, so um, I think it's time, and I think it'll be an easy one to pick up because I'm so intrigued by such a huge dark academia influence. The last book I have physically with me that I want to read is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. So I heard this is more autobiographical, maybe? No, it's not. But it is about a character who I think some people have said is very similar to R.F. Kuang. So, in any case, somehow I know there's at least partial commentary in this narrative that ties to Babel, her other novel she wrote, and or people's impressions of that book. And because I read that book this past winter, I would like to read this sooner rather than later to maybe catch up or catch on to some of those layers of commentary before like the book gets too far in my past and I'm more hazy about it. So that's the biggest reason why I want to read this sooner rather than later. And I'm grateful that I read Babel first because I don't think I originally realized that this could be a little bit related. So yeah, the order of reading it just happened to be exactly what I would have preferred. A nonfiction Christian book that I've been wanting to read for a while that I feel like it's finally time for and I finally have the brain space for in the second half of this year is The Problem of Pain by C.S. Lewis. I think this is actually his last book that's properly on my TBR that I haven't already read. I haven't read every single one of his, but like of the ones I'm interested in, I think this book especially is like one of, if not the thing my non-Christian friends struggle with the most spiritually. So for their sakes and for just continued more informed theological conversations in the future, and for more compassion, honestly, because I love my friends so much, I would love to read this and also honestly see if it could be something any of them find validating or helpful. So I really want to read that at some point. And then the final book, um, which by the way, of course, I'm also going to be reading everything that's still on my 2026 TBR, and I will add the card if you want to go check that out if you haven't already. But I picked one book per month to read. I'm currently 1 month behind, but I will be still reading all 7 of those books that I have not yet read from that list. But the other non-2026 TBR video book that I also want to read this year is Libertad. I forget the author, but my friend just gave me this book recommendation because I'm doing an Around the World challenge, and so this would be for Honduras. Yeah, so what I know about this is it is a queer coming of age story in the midst of the recent rigged election in Honduras. So I think it'll be a really eye-opening account of Honduras economically, politically, socially. And so I'm really looking forward to that, as well as just hearing from a more marginalized voice in more ways than one. Honestly, I'll probably read that one sooner rather than later because it not only hits a goal that I have, but it also is related to the life experiences of a dear friend of mine. And it also is a very intimate look at a country that I did not grow up in. So I think it will be a really, really eye-opening read that hopefully will help me continue to be more compassionate to what people are going through in different areas and personally to better know how to pray for those areas as well. So I'm really, that actually from this current list might be the book that I'm anticipating the most in the current. I have a lot of motivation to read that one, as you can tell. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope you guys have some good books to look forward to. Let me know an answer to any of these, if any of these questions or prompts stuck out to you. And yeah, let me know if there's a book in particular that you're most excited to get to soon or in the second half of the year. And I am excited to read a lot more. I'm sure come my year-end wrap-up, I will have many, many books to talk about and hopefully continue my 4 and 5 stars that I've been having an abundance of this year, which has made me very happy. So I look forward to continuing to nerd out about books with you guys. I hope you have a good evening. I hope you stay cool in this heat wave, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, friends.